Welcome into ProBox TV's Deep Waters. We take a deep dive into all things boxing. In the news right now, Shakur Stevenson turned down a guaranteed $15 million deal with Top Rank in order to test out free agency. Looks like that free agency might lead him into the arms of Floyd Mayweather and Mayweather Promotions. In studio to break it down for you, Jimmy Smith alongside Chris Algieri. Joining us via Zoom is Paulie Malignaggi and Showtime Sean Porter. Showtime, we haven't heard your opinion about this whole Shakur Stevenson free agency talk right now. It looks like it might be kind of a heel turn going with Mayweather. What are your thoughts on him and his immediate future?
Well, first off, let me say I do love this is true free agency, and I'm still questioning, is there some stipulation in the contract that created some extension 2 years ago that he never even knew about? You know what I mean? So I always feel like we dealt with this with Terrence Crawford, where he kept saying this is my last fight with Top Rank, and it was somehow there was always an extension that was put in place. But it doesn't seem to be the case with Shakur. I think now is a great time for him to be a free agent. Test that free agency. The unfortunate part about it is he's kind of shown himself to be somewhat of a boring character in the ring, and so there's no telling if another promoter is going to be wanting to grasp him just for a fight and pay him for a fight, like a Terrence Crawford has been able to do in recent time now. But I would love to see that happen for him. If he were to sign with the promoter, I think it's no secret that PBC has a plethora of 135-pounders, and of course that top dog Tank Davis. So I think if he were to sign with PBC, we expect that fight immediately. I'm hearing that we're gonna have Tank versus maybe even Loma sometime soon in the near future. But to me, that Shakur Stevenson Tank Davis fight is on the horizon. I think it happens next year, especially if Shakur were to sign with PBC or Mayweather. I think I like to see him stay a free agent, but he might put in jeopardy having that fight. So probably best he signed with PBC for a hell of a lot of money.
Now, Chris, you can be honest with me, right? You didn't write today's rundown, did you? Because we were discussing this exact topic post-fight on our way to our hotel room. You and I were both discussing this, kind of what I called a heel turn, right? For Shakur Stevenson, the problem with heels, you said it, they got to keep winning. Do you see that this possible partnership with Mayweather could be part of that heel turn to get some heat, but he's got to keep winning? What are your thoughts on that decision?
Well, it's hard not to look at it. You look at history, you look at Floyd Mayweather. He used to be Pretty Boy Floyd, right? And then he transitioned to Money Mayweather. And he took a heel turn, like I'm going to use your term now, a heel turn. He became the heel. He became the guy that you tuned in to watch lose. And Shakur has always been, he's been a bit of a golden boy. He's been an Olympic medalist, smiling, kid from Newark. We love him. Lately, though, he's been getting at people on Twitter and social media.
People like who?
I don't know. People to rename nameless. And he's been attacking fans, via Twitter and whatnot, having a lot of access to the fans. It's almost like he's becoming a bit of a heel. And like we had said, if you're going to be that guy, if you're going to be the guy who's going to get everyone frustrated or angry about you and wants to see you lose, you got to win. Floyd did that. He mastered that. He wrote the book on that. If you're going to be the heel, you're going to make people mad at you, you have to win. Because once you lose, you take a huge step down, and people are going to come at you that way. So if he is going to take this route, it's kind of interesting that Floyd's stepping in now, like giving him some pointers on how to take this position to get the highest money possible, because that's what Floyd did. And it seems like, to Sean, to your point, if Mayweather is stepping in, and if Shakur is going to take this leap right to PBC, it seems like he's going right for the big dog. He's going right for that Tank Davis fight. He's going for the highest fight possible. He's not looking to collect the belts and then get like a tournament situation where he fights Tank at the top. He wants to fight him right away. And I understand that position absolutely, because then a guy like him, if you're not going to get the fights, if people aren't going to fight you, if you're not going to be super exciting with the lesser-known guys, fight the top dog and beat that guy. And that's how you become the guy, just like Mayweather did.
So, Paulie, do you think this is a right move, promotionally speaking, to make the big fight happen? Do you think Mayweather's the guy who could make it happen? Of course, is the guy who brought up Tank Davis. There's that rivalry there. Do you think it works?
I think it would be more gossip fodder than anything else, because, Tank was with Floyd Mayweather, and then he left Floyd Mayweather, and then it would be, oh, man, Floyd now, pivots and grabs Shakur Stevenson after losing Tank Davis, and now they're going to go after Tank Davis, the former Floyd protege, with the new Floyd protege, which would be Shakur Stevenson. I could see the whole soap opera-esque type of situation developing there if this were to happen. I don't really know if it's going to happen. I think Sean, the champ, mentioned a good point about, this is true free agency, and he's just testing out the market, and he's probably just putting out feelers out there whereas, there probably could be other promoters that will also put their, put out their fishing poles and then look to fish him in, and grab Shakur as well. I think obviously the main case will be getting the biggest fights possible. Those equal the biggest money and also the biggest optics as far as eyeballs on your fights. Right now, Gervonta Davis seems to be the popular guy in the lightweight division, and he's also a lot of people's number one guy. So I think there's a lot to talk about. One bottom line, though, I gotta say is Shakur Stevenson is a world champion, nonetheless. So when we talk about guys becoming free agents as world champions, they will be sought after no matter what. Now, will he get the deal he wants? That's another thing, because guys with world championships will always be sought after because there's money to be made off of world champions. They can make money, and whoever signs those fighters can make money. Just a matter of getting the deal he wants. And I think at this point, getting the deal Shakur Stevenson wants has to also, the bottom line, yeah, it's about money, but it's really also about making sure he's in a deal where he can get the biggest fights possible and doesn't have to wait for them. And so we'll see what that entails and if it entails anything successful for him.
Showtime, I got to ask you, when you look at Shakur Stevenson, and as Chris pointed out, the reactions to the fans, his reactions to, let's face it, the comments here on ProBox TV, Chris has gotten some heat as well from Shakur Stevenson. Is it frustration with his perceived lack of punching power? Everybody falls over themselves talking about Tank Davis, he knocked out with one shot. Shakur Stevenson, the boxer, is it frustration boiling over in this heel turn that we're looking at?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm assuming you're talking about the frustration on Shakur's behalf.
Yes.
Yeah. The response from the crowd at a couple of points in the fight, I said, I promise y'all, I heard the boos. I said, isn't he in Jersey? Like, how are you getting booed at home? Those are the kinds of things that you just cannot do. It's been a part of his. That's the narrative when it comes to Shakur Stevenson. So now the thing is, are you going to, by the way, I had to look up that term, heel turn. Are you going to do this heel turn now? Because if you are, the number one thing I'm going to say about it is you got to go all in. Yeah. And you can't do this heel turn just out of frustration. Frustration comes and goes. I tell you, like Coach Larry Wade told me, don't listen to your emotions. Your emotions will lie to you. If you're being lied to by your emotions right now, you're just on Twitter going on all these rants, but eventually you're going to cool down and become the smiling Jersey kid that we know you to be, that fantastic defensive counterpuncher first. If the heel turn comes, now you got to be complete opposite. Now you got to go at guys. Now you got to force them to fight. Now you got to bang on some guys and knock them out. So this heel turn that could be coming for him, he can't do this halfway. And he's not the kind of guy that's going to become this 100% aggressive kind of fighter. He doesn't have that kind of mentality. Doesn't have that kind of muscle memory within his boxing ability. So it won't work that way. My advice would be cool down, get off of social media, continue being who you are, find the biggest money, and if they can put on the biggest fights for you, go for that. And I do think that is PBC. I don't think we can include Mayweather with this, even though we've seen some things going on with Mayweather. I don't think Mayweather is a part of Tank Davis anymore, at least not at the capacity that he once was. That being said, we got to make this a PBC and Shakur thing, not a Mayweather and Shakur thing, because it becomes, as Paulie said, the drama effect. And that's something that people like, but I don't care for it.
It sells today's boxing. Well, speaking of the old school, speaking of aggression, Manny Pacquiao, old school, one of the most aggressive fighters in the history of the sport, might be making a comeback. Is that a good idea at 147? We discuss it when we come back.
Wednesday Night Fights. Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, July 31st, ProBox veterans Alberto Palmetta and Jesus Sriracha return to battle it out in the main event. Fights.
That's right, Argentina versus Mexico in our main event, July 31st. The way we've been matching them, they've been fantastic wars. See it again, Wednesday Night Fights here at ProBox TV. Get the app now. Now, speaking of exciting fighters who put it all in the ring, you got to include Manny Pacquiao on any all-time list. We saw him devastate Keith Thurman at 40 years old, but now thinking about a comeback at 45 years old, talking about winning a title at 147 over Mario Barrios, WBC welterweight champion. Is that a good idea? Chris, you know Manny Pacquiao well. You shared a ring with him. The Thurman fight, right? I thought it was unbelievable that Thurman was a big underdog in that fight. Turned out Pacquiao still had it at 40. Big difference between 40 and 45. What do you think about this comeback attempt and the opponent?
Well, I mean, when we were getting ready to fight him, we thought he was old. I think he was 36. And then he comes back and he looks great against Thurman. So, yeah, the guy is basically doesn't age. But 45 is different, man. This is a whole nother thing. And whether he wants to fight or not has nothing for me to say. He's a grown man. He can make any decision he wants. The fact that he's able to cut the line and go right to a title fight, that's where I have a problem. It makes the governing bodies look that much more foolish, where what are we talking about these rankings for? Why are these guys fighting tooth and nail to edge up 1 point, one position, when a retired fighter who's 45 years old, hasn't fought in 3.5 years, coming off a loss, can step right back into a world title fight? It's not a good look for the governing bodies. It's not a good look for the contenders in those other weight classes. It'll be a good look for Mario Barrios. He's going to get a huge payday, I'm sure the biggest of his career. He gets a chance to fight a living legend. And all intents and purposes, I think a lot of people would probably have him as a favorite in that fight based on Manny Pacquiao's age and his inactivity. But other than that, I mean, everyone else below him, everyone else who's been fighting tooth and nail to get to that position, it's just unfair to them.
Also, a lot of people tend to forget, when you're talking about comeback fights, Paulie, people forget why you left. Ordina Zugas fight, he did look much slower. Timing wasn't as good. People tend to forget the last 2 or 3 fights when someone comes back. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and then possibly that Barrios just beat Ugas, right? I mean, it's also that you can make that comparison as well, where he's looking at he's probably watching the fight and say, okay, maybe I can take this guy on. I take it more on what the champ Chris is talking about. Maybe this is just a rumor. I can't, even if the governing bodies, as shameless as they can sometimes be, I can't see this guy just walking right back into a title fight after 3.5 years off, and not just 3.5 years off. He's also 45 years old. There's got to be even a health hazard here as well. You got to at least check him out against a mid-range contender first, or maybe they're just watching him in those exhibitions that he's doing. I assume he's probably doing exhibitions. I've heard he's doing exhibitions. Maybe you're just kind of having the eyeball test and seeing if he's capable of reacting, capable of punching. 45 years old is 45 years old. I don't really. Let me put it this way, man. Guys who start doing this at 45 is you're starting to get to that risk factor age, especially when you haven't been active. You got to start to wonder if this guy's broke. I mean, dude, 45 years old and he's still chasing these kind of fights, this kind of money. I don't want to hear that, oh, he's a competitor and whatnot. That's extreme, man. 45 years old is extreme when you have been off for 3.5 years. I think that can be even dangerous, These are still guys that, yeah, okay, in his prime, he'd have been favored to beat them, but he's still 45 years old, and as an inactive 45-year-old, and he's been in a lot of tough fights. Manny's not exactly a guy who was defensively shiny, he was very, very aggressive offensively, took a lot of punches, gave a lot of excitement, but that has to wear on you, man. I mean, again, we were talking about what champ Chris was talking about. They thought he was shot at 36, and then people thought he was shot at 40 with Thurman. This guy's having a lot of tough fights. I can remember when he fought Marquez the second time, and the HBO crew was kind of saying, "Oh, it's been a great run for Pacquiao, but you know what? He sort of looks like he's losing it in the second Marquez fight, And then all of a sudden, it's like they fed him something, and then some kind of high protein vitamin.
He's got his Popeye spinach. He's got that Popeye spinach.
He just went into another dimension for years. For
like a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't I don't know if at 45 years old there's anything you can do anymore. When you've been inactive, even when you've been good, because these guys are still active fighters. Mario Barrios is still an active fighter, and even if you pump Manny full of whatever you want to pump him with, and allegedly, I don't even know if that still benefits him, honestly. 45 and then being inactive is 45 and being inactive, and you start to have to actually worry about him. Is he, first of all, going to be healthy? Because this is all going to catch up to you. Is he all right financially? You would hope so with all the money he's made. Why is he doing this? So a lot of questions you start to ask yourself. It starts. Even as from a legendary standpoint that he's had, this starts to look a little bit desperate. You would hope that he's better than this. I hope.
Showtime, when you talk about Muhammad Ali taking on Larry Holmes, when you ask the people around him, why did you think he could win that fight? They all said the same thing. He had done it so many times before. I had doubted him before, and he had always come up and looked great. We doubted him against Foreman. We doubted him in so many fights, and he found a way to win. But eventually that runs out. Is it this Showtime, this kind of carrot and stick, where Pacquiao did it so many times, we think maybe he's got one more in him? Is that the allure here?
Not my allure. I don't know. I think boxing is still in this phase, unfortunately, where you have some fighters who have done this for as long as they've done it, and they just won't go away. Start commentating. That's what we do. Like we just that's how you
Keeps us out of the ring. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep find something to keep you out of the ring. I don't know. I when I heard Paulie say, we got to work. Wonder. Is he broke? Does he need something? It's like with as much money as he's made, and we know he's made a lot of money, and we know how many times that quadruples over there in the Philippines. Does he need it? I'm willing to side and say he doesn't need it. I think he just loves this sport, and he's looking for a way to continue to be active in the sport. And Mario Barrios is the guy they've looked at because he has a belt and because he has a win over Yordenis Ugas, and that's why they're willing to come back against Mario Barrios. I wouldn't say he's done it so many times, and so we're gonna say, hey, he can do it again. I think that or at least they think that Mario has enough mileage on him, and he's got a style about him that they can take advantage of and win this fight. But they are playing with fire, especially at 45. We all age differently, so we can say that we all age differently. But at some point, we gotta put so many different medical stipulations involved that a fighter doesn't even want to go through it, because we got so many different doctors we got to look at. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? I think that we have to cap it some way. We cap it, and one thing we could do is put so many different medical protocols involved that some of these fighters are like, okay, I can't pass this protocol, which means I can't fight, and they have to accept it. There's no reason for him to get back in the ring outside of the fact that what Paulie said, maybe he needs it. I hope he doesn't, but to me, there's no other reason for him to get in the ring, even with the Mario Barrios that has a WBC title.
Well,
guys, I want to say one thing. Speaking of shameless sanctioning bodies, I just looked up Larry Holmes and Muhammad Ali. Ali hadn't fought for 2 years and still got walked right into a title fight with Larry Holmes.
Yep.
So the shamelessness is not anything new.
It's nothing new. Our parents watch it, our grandparents watch it, and it continues. Also, what continues, 147. Where do we go in the storied welterweight division? We have some options, including Teofimo Lopez. We'll discuss it right after this. Welcome back into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV. We're discussing the welterweight division. Teofimo Lopez perhaps moving up. Brian Norman Jr., 26-0, has expressed a willingness to meet the two-division champion for his WBO interim welterweight title. Now, of course, Teofimo Lopez, a couple years ago, on top of the sport, some up and down performances. A move to 147 could be in the cards for him. Chris, what do you think about this matchup and Teofimo Lopez looking for that kind of rejuvenation, right, of his career?
Well, I mean, Teofimo has hinted at moving up to 147. He's been chasing big names. He was throwing out the name Terrence Crawford. I want to fight the best of the best. He's looking for big marquee fights, but also he's looking for titles. He's one of the guys that understands that titles matter, and this is an opportunity for him to jump up to a third weight class, looks to be a world champion in 3 weight classes against a Brian Norman Jr. And against Brian Norman, and for Brian Norman, it makes sense because there's a bunch of killers at 147. If you got a name guy like Teofimo Lopez who's going to make his entrance into the weight class against you, his first fight at 147, where Teo's not really that big at 140, now he's moving up to 147, you have an opportunity to fight a name guy and not have to go through the other killers that are in your division. So, and plus it's a marquee opponent, name. There's going to be more money attached to it, and it's for a world title. So it actually, when you really think about this fight, it does make a lot of sense.
When you look at the knockout ability of Norman, Paulie, is Teofimo Lopez choosing the right opponent? Norman does have knockout power at 147.
Yeah, he does. But at the same time, Norman is not the biggest name out there. He's sort of growing into his own right now, trying to build up his reputation. It would be a sort of test the waters fight for Lopez as well, going up to the welterweight division. So you can't just go up in a test the waters fight against a complete nobody. Norman has some momentum behind him. The undefeated record. I think he's the one that beat Santillan. It was an impressive win.
Yeah,
knocked him out.
Interim title as well.
Yeah. So I there's stuff there that you can talk about it being making the fight make sense, to where it's not jump in all the way in the deep end for Teofimo Lopez, but you don't want to jump in all the way in the shallow one where the kiddies play either. You know what I'm saying? You got to jump in the pool in the right place because Lopez already has a big reputation, so he's got to take somewhat of a risk. And I think Norman brings just that kind of dynamic to the fight.
Showtime, when you fought at 147 pounds, man, it was a sea full of sharks, man. Absolute killers in the welterweight division. All time, it's one of the greatest divisions ever. Does it still have that shine nowadays at 147? Is that part of the reason Teofimo Lopez wants to move up to it?
My boy said that the other day, and I was like, yo, you're actually right. When I decided to retire, it seemed like 147 just kind of fizzed out instantly once I retired. And I'm not saying that, I was the guy at 147 or anything like that, but it just seems like in the last 2 years, 3 years, 147 has really fizzled out. I heard Chris say that there's a lot of sharks at 147. I'm trying to think like, okay, we got
Ennis.
Boots Ennis, and then we got Virgil Ortiz, and then I can't think of too many others. And then we got Teofimo possibly moving up into the weight class. I think if Teo moves up, I think Norman needs to
Stanionis
fight.
too.
Oh yeah, Stanionis too. Yeah, but I think even Norman, he needs another fight or two to really become everybody's. He's a guy at 147. Big win over Santion, no doubt. Knockout. He got that, but it's not enough at 147 for him, in my personal opinion, for him to be looked at as a serious shark at 147. 26-0. I know everything about it. I know a lot about him, but I don't think the mass general public knows enough about him for him to move up and tell to say, hey, this is a great fight at 147. It's good for both guys, but I don't think the boxing world would be looking at that as this is a marquee fight at 147 yet.
Well, when you talk about marquee, you talk about Tiger Sharks, you talk about Boots Ennis at 147. We'll discuss his future in Philadelphia right after this. Welcome back into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV. We're discussing the welterweight division. As Showtime Sean Porter said, it isn't the Shark Tank it was when he was fighting at 147. I happen to absolutely agree with that. But Boots Ennis, if there is a shark, if there's a great white, it could be Boots Ennis. The question is, does he stay at 147, seek undisputed status, or does he move up in weight class looking for the marquee fight? Chris, if you're in charge of Boots Ennis' career, of course, take on Avanesyan, that's coming up in Philadelphia. Big fight, but he's looking for the majors. They're right now at 154. What's your thought on that?
Listen, Boots is that guy. Boots is that guy. He's the next in line at 147. As long as he can make 147, he is huge. Huge 147. He's been inactive. Going to curious to see how he looks this weekend against Avanesyan. Not in terms of how he looks performance-wise, but in terms of making the weight and how comfortable he is being out of the ring as long as he has. But if he can make the weight and he can stay there, he's going to run right through 147. I think. I think Boots is the goods. And then from there, he can go up to 54. And he can challenge the best in the world at 54. Boots is one of those guys that I think we're going to see for a long time. He's super talented. He's young. He's got the frame for it. He's got shoulders. He's tall. He's long. He can fill out to 54 easily, maybe even 160 one day. And also his style. He's got such an entertaining style. He's hard to hit. He's slick. He's smooth. He's super athletic. He's got power in both hands. He starts fast. He can finish late. I mean, the guy, you name it, this guy can do it.
Cuts get tougher. Paulie, you know that very, very well. You see on the tail of the tape, 27 years old. Should be right in his physical prime, but the cuts get more and more difficult as you get over that age. How long do you think he stays at 147 pounds? To Chris's point, he's a big guy at 47. Does he move right up to 54?
Yeah, he's been at 47 for a while. I didn't realize, I'm looking at the tail of tape now, I didn't realize he was 5'10". That's a pretty big frame for a welterweight. If you've been there for a while, it's a solid frame, but if you've been there for a while, it probably does become harder to make that weight if being 5'10" tall, for a welterweight. I think, if you're 5'10", it's also something that you could go to 154. You wouldn't be the shortest 154 pounder at 5'10". It's still a solid frame to go up to 154 pounds, but I'd like to see him attempt to, clean out the welterweight division. It's not that it's kind of dry as far as big names are concerned, but if he's got the team that can acquire him the title fights quickly, I think if he stays active and he keeps a busy schedule, I think this kid could potentially unify the welterweight division pretty rapidly and pick up a lot of momentum just by doing that. But it takes being active as well, and that you need a regular schedule. And I don't know that a lot of fighters have that anymore because the TV dates aren't as expansive as it used to be, right? And if you're going to unify the welterweight division, you can't do it quickly. Well, then maybe that also becomes not worth it anymore as well if there's not enough big names you're able to acquire. Let's see how he looks against Avanesyan. Avanesyan typically has been a rugged guy, a durable guy, but we'll see if what Avanesyan has left as well. I don't understand this fight so much because I don't see it as I see it kind of as a lose-lose. If he struggles with Avanesyan, which some guys have, then it's like, oh, you struggled with a guy who's kind of just been knocked out by Crawford. What are you doing? If he blows away Avanesyan, people are going to say, oh, well, you know what? He was on the way down. No, Crawford just blew him away with a one-punch KO after that guy had been durable before, and now he wasn't so durable. So what's the use of Ennis knocked him out? I don't understand the choice of opponent here. Avanesyan also fought a guy who was 11-55. That's his only win since Crawford knocked him out cold. So I don't know. I think this kid's been mishandled, been mispromoted his whole career. I don't know that this is the fight that really does anything for him, aside from maybe getting him busy, putting him in front of his Philadelphia fan base. But he's got to get active quickly after this. You can't have Ennis fighting now in July and then not fighting again until December or January. Honestly, man, at this point right now, if Ennis is going to make up for lost time, for me, he's got to fight now. He's got to fight in October, and he's got to fight in January. But then you're taking on a schedule which in modern days only really prospects have. But truthfully, if he's trying to build up his profile, he's got to stay active. And there's some responsibility there both on him and the promoters that are handling him now.
Showtime, when you talked about Shakur Stevenson's performance in New Jersey where fans are leaving and got a little bit booed, there's a potential downside to fighting at home. Does he need that impressive performance, as Paulie said, against Avanesyan to even move forward and silence the critics? What are your thoughts on it?
No, listen, he'll have it. And I believe wholeheartedly in everything that Paulie said. He said top to bottom. So I'll be quick. Boots he'll wash up David and Avanesyan. All respect to him, but they're two different classes. And Jerron Boots Ennis does not have a problem showing what class he's on. This fight goes 3-4 rounds, maybe. I don't see David Avanesyan being able to take much more of that. Beyond that, Paulie said it. He's got to get active. Everybody talks about how he's the best fighter in the world and how everybody at 147 was scared of him. Errol's scared of him. Terrence is scared of him. Nobody wants to fight him. Well, guess what? They were all saying what was true. He hasn't done anything. Okay, yeah, that is the company line. However, when you're inactive, you're also proving that point. You haven't done anything. He's got to get active. Paulie, you're right. I like to see him fight 3 more times this year, maybe even 4 more times, because he's that good. And as long as the people behind him are doing the right thing, you call him out and you tell everybody that they're afraid of him, and you keep knocking them out, doing what you do best. That's how you build up your name and your profile. There's no other way for him to do it. He ain't going to get a big name because those guys are no longer there. He's got to do it by being active.
You heard the advice from Showtime, Sean Porter, Boots Ennis. Stay active. We stay active here at ProBox TV. We'll see you on Deep Waters. Next time you tune in, appreciate you.